Hello and welcome to Trains and Viatic and a Sunday video. I know I started to get out to quite a lot. So today I want to talk to you about point motors for the layout. So what we'll do is we'll go and have the titles and we can come back here and then have a little chat, and then we'll go onto my desk but we'll be able to see what I'm thinking. So now for the titles. One of the things that take a train set beyond a train set into a model railway is the ability to change whereabout trains go. And this is done on model railways with points. On main line they're called switches, and there's a few other names. But when we consider underneath my railway, we're going to have, it will be a bit hard to actually reach points in places. Also, there will be need to change points quite a few at one time, as I want to try to keep stuff running all the time. So I'm going to have to motorise these. There are several options which we'll see when we go onto my desk. Also, there's lots of different types of points. This here is a set track point by Pico, and it's say on the back. There's also on my desk there's a streamline set point. You'll be wondering what's the difference between set track and streamline, and it's a gauge between the tracks, so the distance between that track and that one there. Set track is wider, so I normally use streamline. Also, set tracks tend to be more have more for playing with trains rather than building a railway, because you don't have things like instant frog and isolated frog. You just have one type. I could be wrong, but that's what I have found. So this is a code 100. I don't know what the difference is between the different codes apart from the height of the track. And there's so many different types of points, and this will turn into another discussion when we get to that level. But for the time being, I'm going to be using streamline points because they are closer together, and we'll be using quite a lot down on this level because we're going to have a fiddling yard. So let's go to my desk but we can have a look at point motors, how to control point motors, and a few other bits with point motors. This is a streamline point, and you can see that I've done some adaptation to it. I've wired a black wire and a blue wire, and then we've got this wire here which controls the frog, which is that bit there. This is an electrical frog because that's on metal. An instant frog, that will be plastic. The advantage electric frog have is that when the train crosses from there to there, it's still getting power. Disadvantage is you need to isolate it there and there. But there's a third type which is called a unifrog, which that bit is isolated and metal, and then those two are still powered from for appropriate track. So that's a new thing that Pico's doing. If you're using the electric frog, you have two little bund wires there which you need to remove, as these provide for power to the appropriate tracks. So with that, it never mean you need to control your frog, which is what this orange wire does. But this is what caused me a lot of headaches in my previous layout, as I was using a micro switch on for point, but the point would have changed and the micro switch didn't. So let's look at some of the old point motors I used. These are what I used in the fiddling section. On the main section I used low action tortoise point motors, which move slowly, when these are snap motors, because you have two coils which you momentarily power, so it goes snap, snap. If you have a slow action, you have a smooth action. So we've got these two, which you might think are two different points, but they're actually the same. It's just this is on an adapter, so that you can put that to the side of a point, like so, and then the point will change appropriately. When this one, you would mount it underneath the track, through that hole, and then with it moving it will change the point. This is a similar system that the tortoise use, where about they're under track mounted, and this is something which will give me a bit of a headache on the top layer. But what I ended up using on these are these little Pico Snap mounted ones, and they just fitted on the track like so, and then it would change the points. But all of these had to be controlled, and to control them from the DTC system, I used these, which are Digitrex DS64 point motors. So the way I used it was low-connect in here, low-connect out there. I could use a barrel jack, but I provided power at the front, but I think I'm going to use barrel jacks on the new layout, as that's a bit easier to provide. Then we would connect these to the appropriate outputs, and it would work for points. You'll notice that these have 3 wires. Slow action only have 2 wires. So you change the direction of polarity to the point motor, and that change. So these take up a lot of space, but they'll be used on the top layer. What am I going to do on the bottom? I have got 2 options. I need to control the frog, and this doesn't do it. One option of these cobalt motors, and these are slow action, and you can see that there's an arm there which changes direction. You have a wire that go in and a plastic adapter thingy. So to assemble one of these, you will need the screw, which I'm not going to bother to get out. You put the plastic thing on, you choose an appropriate position, and you put that there. The screw is to hold this in place, and the plastic bit is a pivot. and then that goes through the hole on the track like so, and it will just change the point for us. The advantage this have is we have switching wires only, so I'm needing to change the polarity, but this will be controlled via the DCC system, so you've got DCC in, then that can feed the frogs, or you can do it separately, which is my plan. So this is one of the two options I have. The other option will be on the screen in a moment. So on the screen we should have the image of the Cobalt SS point motors. The reason I'm looking at these is like the IP point motors, we have got independent switching. So we'll have it controlled via DCC, and then the frog will be controlled by the independent switches. Reason I don't want that controlled by the DCC in, which is how these often operate, is that I'm having detections on the track, so I am going to be feeding the track from a separate source to the DCC. So that's just a little thing I'm going to be doing different. So reason I'm going for those compared to these, it will actually be a mixture of both. These are easy to just plonk down and ready to go, and we have all the things easily accessed. But we have loads of points together, trying to fit one of these beside each one, as remember that I'm going to be having on the lower level, I'm not quite sure if I have said it or not, all the point motors will be surface mounted, so that I can easily access everything. And this take up a lot of space compared to the smaller ones, so they're both low action, and that's why I have made that decision. Some of these will be used on the underside of the layout, but not all of them. So I must probably end up with a box of these and a box of the other ones. The only downside is the cost of the other point motors. For 12 point motors, which is what I need, I'll be looking at about £400. So things will happen slowly, but it does provide me with a frog switching, and I can have buttons if I want, and I can just wire everything to the DCC. So I'm going to leave us here. We have had a good discussion about my plans for points and point motors, but just a few other point motors I do have. I have an ESU switch pilot. These are quite simple with multiple output configurations, and also for DL4018, which is what everybody know I use for my lighting. These can control points, but they need a special adapter to do slow action point motors, so that's why for the main layout it's going to be for DS64s, and underneath it's going to be for DCC concept. So I'm going to leave us here. Thank you very much for watching. Remember to like, subscribe, comment, tell your friends, tell your enemies, and I'll be back at 8 o'clock on Wednesday for the next live stream building for foreground model church. So thank you very much, Richard.